My name is Torai Myers and I am 24 years old. 6 months ago, on one of the most important days of my life, I sat inside a graduation hall surrounded by 2,000 people, staring at an empty chair where my parents were supposed to be. When I called my mother, she answered while laughing. I could hear glasses clinking in the background, music playing, and the sound of plates and silverware. She said, "Honey, we already have one success in the family. We did not think you would actually finish. My father did not even come to the phone. Last week, I sent them one photo. My mother called me 47 times within a single hour. I know the exact number because I watched every call come through while sitting on the porch of a house that now belongs to me. I did not answer any of them. Before I tell you what was in that photo, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly connect with this story. Leave a comment sharing where you are watching from and what time it is where you are. I would like to know who is listening. Now, let me take you back 6 months to a Saturday morning in May. It was the day I was supposed to walk across the stage and finally hear my name announced. The light coming through my small apartment window that morning was dim and grey. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror wearing my cap and gown, trying to zip the back on my own. The zipper kept getting stuck on the thin fabric. Eventually, I used a wire hanger, hooking it into the zipper and reaching behind my neck until I was able to pull it up. I checked my phone. I had sent 3 messages to my mother over the past week, all about the ceremony. The first message, sent on Monday, said, "Ceremony is Saturday at 10 a.m. I have 4 seats reserved." She replied, "We will see." On Wednesday, I texted again, asking if she, my dad and Brandon were coming. She sent back a thumbs up emoji and nothing more. On Friday night, I sent, "Tomorrow is the day. I am so excited. Love you guys." It was marked as read at 9:47 p.m. but there was no response. I took a selfie in my cap and gown and sent it to the family group chat. Brandon reacted with a fire emoji. My parents said nothing, not a single word. I grabbed my keys and drove 20 minutes to campus. The parking lot was already filling up. I saw families arriving, mothers holding flowers, fathers adjusting their ties, and younger siblings carrying handmade signs. One girl walked past me with both of her parents holding onto her arms, as if they did not want to let her go. I sat in my car for a moment and checked the group chat again. There was still nothing new. I told myself this day was different. A graduation is not something you can reschedule like a dinner. A graduation is proof. It represents 4 years of working double shifts at the campus library, eating cheap meals, managing tight budgets, and studying late into the night at 3 a.m. If anything could finally make them see me, I believed it would be this. I had 4 reserved seats in the family section. By the end of the day, 3 of them would still be empty. Inside the hall, the noise was overwhelming. There were 2,000 graduates and even more people in the stands. A baby cried somewhere, and a man whistled loudly enough for it to echo across the room. I found my assigned row, sat down, and adjusted my gown over my knees. The family section was to the left, separated by a rope, with printed name cards placed on each chair. From where I sat, I could clearly see the 4 seats labeled Myers. All 4 were empty. I sent my mother a text. "The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. Are you close?" 2 blue check marks appeared. There was no reply. I texted Brandon. "Are Mom and Dad on their way?" I saw the typing indicator appear, then disappear, and finally his message came through. "I do not know. I am at work." His AutoZone location always closed early on Saturdays. I knew that. And he knew that I knew it. At 9:55, a woman approached the Myers seats. It was not my mother. It was Professor Dolores Whitfield, 61 years old. with silver hair pulled back neatly, wearing a blazer she reserved for formal occasions. She placed a small bouquet of yellow tulips on the chair next to her and sat down. She looked across the room, met my eyes, and gave me a simple nod. Later, I found out that she had called my mother the day before to confirm if she would attend. My mother told her she had a family obligation. Professor Whitfield did not question it. Instead, she bought tulips and drove 45 minutes to be there. When my name was called, Torai Ann Myers, Bachelor of Science in Accounting, magna cum laude, I walked across the stage. The applause was polite and general. There was no cheering, no loud celebration, no sign with my name. There was only Professor Whitfield's voice, clear and strong from the family section, saying, "That is my student." I held my diploma cover and kept walking. After the ceremony, the parking lot was crowded and loud. Families were hugging, crying, and taking photos in front of the university banner. One father lifted his daughter onto his shoulders. A grandmother held a cake decorated with the graduate's face. I sat on a bench near the east exit and called my mother. She answered on the second ring. I could hear laughter, restaurant noise, and a Bon Jovi song playing. She said, "Hi, honey. We are at Carrabba's. Brandon got promoted. Assistant manager. That is amazing, right?" I closed my eyes and said, "Mum, my graduation was today." There was silence for 3 full seconds. Then she replied, "Honey, we already have one success in the family. We did not think you would actually finish." I heard my father's voice in the background saying, "Tell her we will take her to dinner next week." I opened Facebook and saw my mother's latest post, shared 2 hours earlier, right when the ceremony had started. It showed her my father and Brandon sitting at a restaurant table with bread and wine. Brandon was smiling. The caption read, "So proud of our son. Assistant manager at 27. Hard work pays off." The post had 43 likes and heart emojis from relatives I had not heard from in months. I did not say anything else. I ended the call. I remained seated on that bench for a long time as the parking lot slowly emptied. A janitor swept up confetti near the entrance. Professor Whitfield had left the tulips on the passenger seat of my car, along with a note that read, "First of many." I placed my diploma beside them. That seat was where my mother would have sat if she had been there. That was the last time I called my mother for 6 months. It was not because I was angry. It was because I finally understood that I had been waiting for approval from someone who was never going to give it. To understand everything, I need to go back further. I graduated high school at 18 with a 3.9 GPA. I was accepted into State University with a partial scholarship worth $8,000 per year. I would need to cover the rest on my own. I brought the acceptance letter home one Tuesday in March and placed it on the kitchen table. My mother read it and said, "We do not have money for that." Torai. That same month in the same kitchen, my father bought my brother Brandon a Chevrolet Silverado with upgrades, costing $38,000. Brandon had just started working at an auto parts store. He was 21 and living at home without paying rent. I stood outside and watched as they gave him the keys. My mother took pictures and my father congratulated him. Brandon started the engine, and everyone on the block could hear it. They spent $38,000 on a truck and nothing on my education. I did not argue or cry. I went to my room, opened my laptop, and started searching for full-time jobs. From age 18 to 20, I worked as a cashier at Hendrick's Grocery. I worked mornings, evenings, and holidays. I saved $14,000 in a personal account that my parents did not know about. I lived at home, ate the meals my mother made, and watched Brandon drive his truck while I took the bus. When I turned 20, I enrolled in State University. I paid for everything myself, including tuition, books, and food. My parents did not contribute anything. My father drove past the campus every week for work, but never visited me once in 4 years. They said they did not have money for my education, but they had money for his truck. Those are not the same thing, even though I tried to convince myself they were. College was a constant balance. I was a full-time student and a part-time worker. I worked 25 hours a week at the campus library while taking a full course load. My GPA never dropped below 3.7. Every holiday, I went home, and every visit felt the same. During Thanksgiving in my junior year, my mother spent most of dinner talking about Brandon's raise of 50 cents per hour. When I mentioned making the dean's list, she said, "That is nice. Can you help set the table?" I brought home a certificate for being an outstanding accounting student. I framed it myself and placed it on the refrigerator. It was positioned below a photo of Brandon with his truck. The next day, the certificate had fallen to the floor and remained there until I picked it up. My father visited Brandon at work every Thursday, but never once visited me at school, even though it was only 45 minutes away. I checked the distance on Google Maps to confirm. 45 minutes, 4 years, and not a single visit. There was only one phone call. It happened during my junior year. My father called and asked if I knew an electrician near campus for one of his clients. That was the entire conversation. It lasted 14 seconds. I remembered the exact time because I was surprised to see his name on my phone. The night after graduation, I sat in my apartment with only a desk lamp turned on. On my nightstand was the only family photo I owned, taken when I was 14. In that photo, my mother stood in the center, my father behind her, Brandon beside her, and I stood at the edge with part of my shoulder cut off. I calculated everything. 6 years since high school, including 2 years working and 4 years in college. I had spent $47,000 on my education. My parents contributed nothing. My scholarship covered about $8,000 per year. Then I paid the rest myself. Every dollar came from working long hours. And on the day I graduated, they chose to go to Carrabba's. I looked at that photo and saw 4 people, 3 who chose dinner over my achievement, and 1 who spent 6 years trying to be seen. I had a decision to make. I could continue reaching out and hoping for a different result, or I could move forward with my life. I turned the photo face down on the nightstand. I did not throw it away. I simply turned it over. Then I opened my laptop and updated my resume. I did not delete their numbers or block them. I just stopped calling. For the first time in 6 years, I kept my energy instead of giving it away. The next morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. and started applying for jobs. I submitted 11 applications before noon. 2 weeks passed in silence. I did not call or text, and neither did they. The group chat remained unchanged. Then my mother called. She said, "Honey, we feel terrible about missing your graduation. Let us have dinner this weekend, the whole family." I said yes. I am not sure why I agreed. Maybe it was habit, or maybe it was the last small piece of hope I still had. The part of me that kept saying, maybe this time they will finally understand. On Saturday night, I drove to my parents' house. It looked exactly the same, with beige siding, the American flag on the porch, and the Silverado parked in the driveway. I brought a bottle of wine with me. My mother opened the door, hugged me, and said, "We are so sorry we missed it, sweetheart." We truly are. We sat down to eat. There was pot roast, mashed potatoes, and canned green beans. For about 10 minutes, everything felt almost normal. Then Brandon showed up late, loud as always, dropping his keys onto the counter. The moment he walked in, the entire conversation shifted. My mother said, "Brandon, tell Torre about the apartment." He started talking about a 1-bedroom place downtown. My parents were helping him with the deposit, $3,000. My mother described the layout in detail, like she had already studied the floor plan herself. I waited for a pause in the conversation and said, "I am applying to accounting firms nearby. There is one I am really excited about." My father looked up from his plate and asked, "Accounting? Like doing taxes?" My mother tilted her head slightly and said, "That sounds stable, I guess." Then she immediately turned back to Brandon and asked, "So when are you moving in?" I stood up and began clearing the table. There were 7 plates. I counted them because I needed to focus on something other than what I had just heard. From the living room, I overheard my father speaking in a low voice, clearly meant only for Brandon. He said, "Your sister thinks she is too good for a real job now." I washed all 7 plates, dried them, stacked them neatly, and then drove home. 2 days later, I scheduled an interview with Greystone and Associates, a regional accounting firm with 12 employees and a strong reputation. Professor Whitfield had personally emailed the managing partner on my behalf. I made the mistake of mentioning the interview at the next family dinner. My mother leaned forward, her forehead creased with concern. "Honey, are you sure about this? You are still so young. What if it does not work out and it ends up on your record?" She paused, then added, "Brandon was already earning real money at your age. No stress, no pressure." I explained that the interview was just an opportunity to talk. She nodded slowly, the way she does when she has already decided that I am wrong. The next afternoon, my phone rang. It was my aunt, Margene, my father's older sister, the one who always sent birthday cards with $10 inside. She said, "Torai, congratulations on graduating. I am sorry I am late. I just heard your mother mention it at church." I thanked her and told her how much that meant to me. Then she added, "She also told me you are interviewing at some small firm." She sounded worried and said she hopes you will not be too disappointed. I sat on my bed, staring up at the ceiling. My mother had taken the one piece of good news I shared and turned it into something negative for the rest of the family. That same night, I called her and kept my voice calm. "Did you tell Aunt Margene my interview was a waste of time?" She replied, "I was just worried. That is what mothers do. You always twist my words." The next day, Aunt Margene called me again and said something I will never forget. "Your mother has a habit of doing this, Torai. She has done it before, even with your father's sister. She takes other people's good news and turns it into her own concern." That was the first time anyone in my family openly acknowledged the pattern. That evening, I called Professor Whitfield and explained everything, including the call to Margene and how my mother reframed the situation. She stayed quiet for a long moment, then said, "Torai, I have worked with students like you for 30 years. You are capable, hardworking, and you keep reporting your progress to people who use it against you. Stop sharing. Your success belongs to you. Protect it." I thought about her words for an entire day. Then I made a decision. From that point forward, my family would not get any new information. I would not cut them off completely, but I would stop sharing updates, achievements, or anything personal. I would give them nothing new. The following Tuesday, I went to my interview at Greystone. The office was inside a converted Victorian house on Main Street. It had wooden floors, tall windows, and a receptionist named Dana, who offered me coffee in a real mug. Margaret Greystone met me in her office. She was 63 years old, wore silver reading glasses on a chain, and had a CPA license on the wall dated 1987. She built the firm from a small one-room office above a hardware store. She asked me standard questions about my experience, strengths, and 5-year plan. Then she set her pen down and asked, "Why accounting?" I had prepared an answer about logic and career stability, but what I actually said was, "Because numbers do not play favorites." She looked at me for 3 seconds, then picked up her pen and wrote something in her notebook. I could not see what it was. She said, "We will be in touch, Miss Myers." I shook her hand and walked outside into the sunlight on Main Street. My phone was in my pocket. For the first time in my life, something important had happened, and I did not feel the need to call my mother. I drove home with the windows down. The air smelled like freshly cut grass at the start of summer. I did not tell anyone about the interview. I kept it to myself. If you are listening to this, and you have ever hidden your own success from your family, not because you are modest, but because you know they will use it against you, then you understand exactly how that drive home felt. And if this story is helping you put words to something you have never said out loud, press the like button so I know, because what comes next is where everything began to change. The call came on a Thursday. It was Dana from Greystone, the receptionist who served coffee in real mugs. She said, "Ms. Myers, Margaret would like to offer you the staff accountant position. The salary is $58,000 per year, with full benefits starting in 2 weeks." I sat down on my kitchen floor. It was not intentional. My knees simply gave out. I said, "I accept." The first person I called was Professor Whitfield. She answered on the first ring, as if she had been expecting it. She said, "Do not thank me. Thank your GPA." I replied, "I am thanking you anyway." She said, "That is fine, but you can buy me coffee after your first paycheck." Next, I called Cora, my best friend since my second year of college, and the only person who fully understood everything my family had done and not done. She screamed so loudly that I had to move the phone away from my ear. She ordered a pizza for me from across town. Pepperoni and mushroom, our standard celebration routine. That night, I sat on my couch with the pizza box open, and my offer letter printed out on the table in front of me. I looked at my phone and saw my mother's name in my contacts. My thumb hovered over the screen. This was the moment I had imagined for years. Proof that I had made it. A real job, a real salary, and a real title. This should have been the moment everything changed. I put the phone down. For the first time, something good happened, and I chose not to share it with someone who would minimize it. Later that night, I opened Facebook. My mother had posted a new photo. It showed the whole family at a weekend barbecue, with burgers, lawn chairs, and Brandon cooking on the grill. The caption said, "Nothing beats family time." The post had 16 likes and several heart emojis. I was not in the photo. I had not been invited. I unfollowed her page, closed the app, and finished my pizza. 2 months into my job at Greystone, I was doing well. Margaret gave me more responsibility each week, including client reconciliations, quarterly reports, and finishing a small business audit that had been left incomplete. I stayed late when needed, not to impress anyone, but because the work felt meaningful to me. When I received my first paycheck, I opened a new savings account and transferred $1,200, combined with the $14,000 I had saved from Hendrix and the $3,500 I managed to save during college. I finally had some financial stability. It was not a large amount, but it was a solid start. One Friday, Cora and I had lunch at a sandwich shop on Elm Street. She rented a 1-bedroom apartment across town for $900 per month, with no dishwasher and a landlord who barely responded to maintenance requests. She said, "I will probably be renting forever." I told her, "I have been looking at houses." She nearly choked on her food and asked, "On our salary?" I explained that I was serious. I had been reviewing my finances during my lunch breaks. A small starter home in the area, with 2 bedrooms and a yard, typically cost between $130,000 and $150,000, with an FHA loan. I would need about 3.5% down, which was around $5,000 plus closing costs. I had enough saved. I found a house on a Tuesday. It had 2 bedrooms, one bathroom, a small front porch with a railing that needed paint, white siding, a red mailbox, and a backyard with a birch tree. The listing price was $139,000. Located on Maple Ridge Drive in a quiet part of Milford, where the streets had sidewalks and the yards were fenced. At the time, I did not realize that Maple Ridge Drive was the same road my father used every morning on his way to work, and the same road my mother drove every day to her job at the dental office dot before the house closed. There was my father's 55th birthday party in March. My mother hosted it at their house, with folding tables set up in the backyard, coolers filled with drinks, and a sheet cake from the grocery store. About 20 people attended, including Aunt Margene, Uncle Rick, some cousins and neighbors. I had not visited in months, but I decided to go because it was my father's birthday. I brought a bottle of Merlot and a card that said, "Happy birthday, Dad." My mother opened the door, looked at me, and simply said, "Oh, you came." There was no warmth in her voice. I sat next to Aunt Margene, who held my hand under the table for a full minute. After dinner, my father stood up to give a short speech. He thanked everyone for coming and talked about family and hard work. Then he raised his drink and said, "I am especially proud of Brandon. He is building his career and becoming a leader at his store. That is what this family stands for. Working hard and getting results." Everyone raised their drinks. I did the same without thinking. He did not mention my name at all. There was no acknowledgement of my graduation, my degree, or my job. Aunt Margene leaned over and whispered, "He did not even say your name." I kept my expression neutral, took a sip of wine, and set my glass down. Then Brandon spoke, and I immediately wished he had stayed quiet. He had already had 3 beers and was leaning back in his chair, smiling. He said loudly, "Dad taught me everything I know." Meanwhile, Torai spent 6 years learning how to use a calculator. Some people laughed. Not everyone, but enough. Uncle Rick chuckled and a neighbor smirked. My father smiled slightly, and my mother did not correct him. Instead, she gave a soft, amused smile. Cousin Derek, who sat across from me, stayed silent but watched me closely. I put my fork down, looked at Brandon, and said calmly, 6 years of learning, and I now have a degree and a career. You are welcome to visit my office if you want to see how I use it." The table went quiet. Brandon's smile faded slightly as he said, "Relax, it was just a joke." My mother immediately stepped in and said, "Torai, do not ruin your father's birthday." There it was again, the same pattern. She defended him and corrected me. Even in front of 20 people, nothing had changed. I nodded and said, "You are right. Happy birthday, Dad." I returned to my plate. Under the table, Aunt Margene squeezed my hand again and whispered, "I see you. Do not make yourself smaller." I did not. I finished my meal, helped clear the dishes, and quietly left through the side gate before anyone could stop me. I drove home with both hands firmly on the wheel. I was not upset. I was certain. 6 years of moments replayed in my mind, one after another, and for the first time, everything made complete sense. The certificate behind the trash can, the 0 contribution to my education, the Silverado in the driveway. We will see. The thumbs up emoji. Carabas. We had already achieved one small victory learning how to use a calculator. Do not ruin your father's birthday. Every line, a tile in the same pattern. For the first time, I could see the entire picture without needing to squint. At a red light on Route 9, I opened the family group chat. I typed with one thumb, "I will not be attending family events for a while. I need space." I pressed send. The light turned green. I drove forward. My phone rang before I had even traveled 2 blocks. My mother. I pulled over and answered. "What is wrong with you?" Her voice was high and tight. It was a joke. You are overreacting, Torai. You always do this. I waited until she finished speaking. Then I said calmly, as if I was delivering a final statement. I am not overreacting. I am done performing for an audience that already decided I am the understudy. I hung up. At home, I sat on the edge of my bed. I opened my phone. Settings. Blocked contacts. Linda Myers. Add. Gary Myers. Add. Brandon Myers. Add. 3 names. 7 seconds. I set the phone on my nightstand and lay back. The ceiling above was white, blank, and perfect. No noise, no group chat notifications, no mother calling to explain why my feelings were inconvenient. 3 months later, 6 months after graduation, I would sign my name on 47 pages of closing documents. But I did not know that yet. All I knew was the silence in my apartment, and how much it felt like the start of something new. Closing day arrived on a Wednesday in November. The law office smelled like new carpet and fresh printer toner. I wore my best blouse, the navy one I had bought for my Greystone interview, and signed 47 pages. 47. I did not plan the number. Sometimes the universe simply has a sense of rhythm. Cora sat beside me as my witness. Every few pages, she leaned over and whispered something. Homeowner Torai, landlord Torai, or Torai who owns a mailbox. I kept shushing her, but my smile stretched so wide it hurt my face. The title attorney slid the last page across the desk. I signed. He reached into a drawer and placed a single key on a small cardboard tag. Congratulations, Ms. Myers. You are a homeowner. I held the key in my palm. It weighed almost nothing, yet it felt like 6 years compressed into a single ounce of brass. Cora drove behind me to the house. I pulled into my driveway, and sat there for a moment. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a front porch with a railing I would repaint in the spring. The sold sign still staked in the front yard, red letters against white. The neighbor to the right, Betty Harmon, 70 years old, silver perm, gardening gloves always on, looked up from her flower bed and waved. Welcome to the neighborhood, dear. I waved back. Cora grabbed my arm and led me to the front door. I put the key in the lock, turned it and pushed. The house smelled like fresh paint and possibility. Cora pulled out her phone. Stand on the porch by the sign. I stood there with the key in my hand and the sold sign behind me. She took 3 photos. In the best one, I was laughing. I do not remember what she said. I just remember the sound was mine. I posted the photo that evening with a simple caption. First-time homeowner, no cosigner, no help. Just 6 years of calculators. I had blocked my parents and Brandon months ago. They would not see it. But Milford is a town of 12,000 people. And in a town this size, Facebook is like a community notice board with a share button. By morning, the post had 87 likes. By afternoon, over 200. Friends from high school, co-workers at Greystone, old teachers. People I had not spoken to in years. Comments poured in. So proud of you. You did that. First in the family, right? Amazing. Cousin Derek shared it on his own page. His caption read, proud of my cousin. Some people do not need cheering sections to succeed. His mother, Aunt Margene, liked it within minutes and then shared it again. Cora texted me at night. Torai, your post has 200 shares. People from your high school are tagging their friends. One of the Milford community pages reposted it. I had not expected that. I had posted it for myself, or maybe for the version of me who had stood in that parking lot in May, holding a diploma and a phone with no missed calls. But here is the thing about small towns. Walls are thin, fences are short, and news travels through church pews, grocery aisles, and group chats faster than any algorithm. I did not know it yet, but Aunt Margene had screenshotted the photo and sent it to the extended family group chat. The one with all the aunts, uncles, and cousins. The one my mother checked every morning with her coffee. I had blocked my parents on every platform I could think of, but I could not block a 12,000-person town. And I could not block Aunt Margene's sense of justice. Linda Myers was sitting in the break room at the dental office on a Thursday afternoon when her phone buzzed. The family group chat. The big one with all the in-laws and cousins. Margene had sent a photo with the caption, "Look at our girl." My mother opened it. Her daughter standing on a porch holding a key. The sold sign on the lawn behind her, and a caption she had to read twice. 6 years of calculators, she called me. The number she had been dialing for 24 years went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. She borrowed the office phone. Voicemail. She tried from her personal cell. The office landline. Then, according to Aunt Margene, she drove to the parking lot and called from her car 6 more times. Meanwhile, 10 miles away, my father was driving his work truck down Maple Ridge Drive. The same route he took every morning, past the birch trees and neat fences. He glanced to the right out of habit and saw the sold sign in front of the house next to Betty Harmon's place. Then he saw the car in the driveway, a grey Honda Civic. He knew that car. He pulled over, sat in his truck and stared. He called my mother. "Did you know about this?" Her voice came through the speaker, cracked and raw. She bought a house on Maple Ridge. 47 calls in 1 hour. I know because my phone logs them even when they are blocked. I pulled up the list that evening, sitting at my new kitchen table, and counted. 47. Same number as the pages I had signed. Same number as the $1,000 times 1,000 I had spent on the education they called unnecessary. I set my phone face down on the counter, in my kitchen, in my house. 47 calls. You know what the saddest part is? If my mother had spent even a fraction of that energy on my graduation day, just one call saying, "Honey, we are so proud of you," then that photo might have been sent to her first, not last. If this hits close to home, share this story with someone who needs to hear it today, because the next part is when they show up at my door. Brandon arrived the next afternoon. I was not expecting him. I had forgotten he was not blocked because he had never actually called. He stood on my porch in his Ortizone polo, hands in pockets, looking at the house like he was appraising a car he could not afford. "Nice place," he said. "Thanks. Mum is losing her mind too, so she can lose it somewhere else." He shifted his weight. "Come on, she is your mom. She just wants to talk. She had 4 years to talk. She had a phone at my graduation. She chose Carrabba's." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I did not realize it was that bad. You did not want to know. There is a difference." He looked at me like I had flipped a switch he did not know existed. The golden child standing in the scapegoat's doorway. For the first time, the math did not add up the way he had been taught. "I do not hate you," I said. "I do not hate them. But I am done being the person who makes this family feel okay about how they treat me." He nodded slowly, as if processing something heavy. Then he turned and walked back to his truck and opened the door. I noticed then on the passenger seat a paper bag from the grocery store. Inside, a small bouquet of yellow daisies and a card. I could read the envelope from where I stood. "Congratulations on your new home." He had bought them on the way over. Drove here with them sitting right there, but had not handed them to me. He had come to deliver our mother's message instead of his own. He drove away with the flowers still on the seat. I went inside and closed the door. I did not lock it, but I did not leave it open either. 3 days later, I came home from work and found my mother sitting on my front steps. Betty Harmon was across the yard, watering her azaleas, watching without watching. My mother stood up. Her eyes were red. She wore the same blouse she had on at church. She must have come straight from somewhere public, which meant she had been thinking about this all day. "You bought a house," she said, "and you did not even tell me." I set my bag down on the porch railing. "I got into college and you did not come. I graduated and you went to Carrabba's. Why would I tell you about a house? That is not fair. We were celebrating your brother. You always are." She changed tactics. The shift was visible. Her posture straightened, her chin lifted. Her voice climbed half an octave. "So this is how you repay me after everything I sacrificed? I carried you for 9 months. And this is what I get." I stayed still. "You sacrificed?" "Mum, name one thing you paid for in my education." "One textbook, one meal plan, $1. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. "That is what I thought." Her lip trembled. "You are punishing me." "No," I said, "I am just living. And for the first time, I am not waiting for you to notice." Betty turned off her hose. The yard became quiet. A car passed on Maple Ridge. Somewhere a dog barked. My mother stood on my porch. The porch I had paid for, on the house I had earned, on the street she drove every day. For the first time, she had no script, no redirect, no "but Brandon," no mother worries, just silence, and the sound of her own argument collapsing under its own weight. My mother started to cry, not dramatically, but quietly, the kind of crying someone does when they realize the scene is not going the way they rehearsed. I did not step forward. I did not step back. I stayed exactly where I was. "Mum," I said, "I do not want to fight. I do not want revenge. I want you to understand something." She looked up. "I am done earning a seat at a table that was never set for me." She wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand. Mascara smudged across her cheekbone. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to go home and think about why your daughter bought a house on the street you drive every single day, and you did not even know." She stared at me, then turned and walked down the porch steps slowly, as if she were older than 52. She got to her car, opened the door, and turned back. "Your father saw the house Monday morning. He pulled over. He sat in his truck for 10 minutes. I held her gaze. Then maybe he should think about why he sat in a truck instead of walking to the door. She got in, closed the door, and sat there for a moment with her hands on the steering wheel. Then she backed out and drove down Maple Ridge toward home. Betty Harmon had stopped pretending to garden. She stood at the fence, hose coiled at her feet, watching the car disappear. "You okay, sweetheart?" "Yeah, Betty," I said. "I am okay." I went inside, closed the door, leaned my back against it, and let out a breath I had not realized I was holding since May. I did not cry. I just stood there in my hallway, and let the quiet settle around me like something I had finally earned in a town like Milford. You cannot sneeze without someone offering you a tissue and telling 3 people about it. Within a week, the story had spread through every channel that mattered in a small town. Facebook, the grocery checkout line, the church parking lot, the salon on Pine Street. On Sunday morning, my mother walked into Grace Fellowship the way she always did. Pressed blouse, pearl earrings, practiced smile. She slid into her usual pew, 3rd row from the back. After the service, Dorothy Henderson, 74 years old, head of the women's ministry, a woman who collected gossip like others collected stamps, caught my mother near the coffee table. "Linda, I saw your daughter bought a house on Maple Ridge. You must be so proud. Did you help with the down payment?" My mother's smile stayed, but her eyes faltered. "Oh, you know Tori. She's always been independent." Dorothy leaned closer. "My daughter mentioned you were at Carrabba's on her graduation day." Was that the celebration dinner afterward? The color left my mother's face. She set her coffee cup on the nearest table. Too hard, some spilled, mumbled something about needing to find my father, and walked toward the parking lot. At my father's shop the same week, a regular customer named Dale dropped off a leaky faucet and said, "Saw your girl on Facebook, Gary, homeowner at 24. That is something." My father nodded once and kept his eyes on the pipe. "Yeah, she is something." My mother stopped going to the Wednesday evening Bible study. She skipped the potluck. She started parking on the far side of the church lot near the exit so she could leave before anyone cornered her. For the first time in her life, the story people were telling about the Myers family was not the one she had written. The following week, Brandon sat at our parents' kitchen table for Tuesday dinner. Same table, same pot roast, same green beans, but the room felt different. My mother barely spoke. She stared out the window at the backyard where the birthday party had been. My father chewed in silence, eyes on his plate. Brandon put down his fork. "So, are we just not going to talk about it?" My mother's voice was flat. "Your sister made her choice." Brandon looked around the table. 3 place settings. The 4th chair, my chair, sat empty at the end, pushed in tight against the table like someone had tried to pretend it was not there. He thought about things he had not thought about in years. The certificate on the refrigerator that ended up on the floor. The family barbecue photo where Tori was on the edge. The graduation he had shrugged off with, "I do not know." "I am at work." The calculated joke that got a laugh from everyone except the one person who mattered. "Mom," he said, "did you actually go to her graduation?" "We were busy," she said. "We had your dinner." "My dinner was at Caraba's, Mom." He said it slowly, as if he were hearing it for the first time himself. Her graduation was once. The kitchen went still. The refrigerator hummed. My father looked up from his plate and stared at Brandon with an expression I wish I could have seen. Something between surprise and recognition, like watching someone pick up a tool they had never been taught to use. Nobody spoke for a long time. Brandon finished his dinner, washed his own plate, drove home to his apartment, the one my parents had helped pay for, and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes before going inside. He called me the next day. I answered because his number was the one I had forgotten to block. Every morning, my father drove down Maple Ridge Drive on his way to the shop. He had been driving that road for 15 years. He could do it with his eyes closed. But now there was a house on the right side, between Betty Harmon's place and the Kowalskis. That made him slow down. The first morning after he discovered it, he pulled over and sat in his truck for 10 minutes, staring at the house. The fresh paint on the trim. The red mailbox. The Honda Civic in the driveway. That meant his daughter was inside 40 feet away, drinking coffee in a kitchen she owned. He wanted to get out, walk up the porch steps, knock, but he did not know what to say. In 55 years, Gary Myers had never apologized to a woman. Not to his wife, not to his sister, not to his daughter. He had been raised by a man who showed love by showing up to work. And Gary had done the same, except he had forgotten to show up for things that did not have a time clock. So, he drove on. The next morning, he slowed again. Did not stop, but slower. The morning after that, he pulled to the curb, sat for 3 minutes. The kitchen light was on. He could see a shadow moving behind the curtain. Betty Harmon noticed. Of course she did. She started timing him. Not out of nosiness, she told me later, but out of hope. "I have been married 51 years, honey. I know what a man looks like when he is trying to find the words. 3 weeks every morning, a little longer each time. I knew I saw the truck from my kitchen window. I recognized the engine. The same rumble I had heard in the driveway my whole childhood. I did not go out. I did not close the curtain. I drank my coffee and waited for him to find his own way to the door. Aunt Margine came by on a Saturday with a foil-covered pan of lasagna and a bottle of wine, slightly too expensive for a casual visit. She sat at my kitchen table and looked around like she was memorizing the place. "You did this," she said. "You actually did this." "I did this." She poured 2 glasses. "Your mother is a mess, Torai. The church ladies are asking questions she cannot answer. Your father goes quiet every time someone says your name. Dorothy Henderson brought it up again last Sunday, and your mother nearly knocked over the communion tray getting out of the pew." "Good." Margine gave me a look. Not disapproval, just steadiness. "I'm not saying feel sorry for them. I'm saying they are starting to understand. And that process is ugly." She told me my mother had called her 3 times that week, crying, saying I hated her, saying she did not deserve this. Margine had listened each time and then said the same thing. "She does not hate you, Linda. She just stopped hoping." Margine set her glass down and looked at me. "That is the hardest thing for a parent to hear. Not I hate you, but I do not expect anything from you anymore." I ran my finger around the rim of my glass. "Is that wrong? To stop expecting?" "It is honest, and honest is all you owe them." We ate the lasagna, drank the wine. She told me about Derek's new job and Uncle Rick's bad knee, and the neighbor's cat that kept digging up her tulips. Normal things, family things, the kind of conversation I had stopped having with my own parents so long ago. I had forgotten what it sounded like. When she left, she held me for a long time at the door. "You are doing fine, kid. Better than fine." 6 months to the day after I started at Greystone, Margaret called me into her office. The room smelled like the lavender candle she kept on the windowsill. Her reading glasses sat on a stack of client folders. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Your 6-month review," she said, sliding a printed sheet toward me. "Every category exceeds expectations. Client satisfaction, accuracy, initiative, teamwork, 5 for 5. I am promoting you to senior staff accountant, effective next month." She paused. "And I want you to lead the Watkins account." The Watkins account was the firm's largest client, a regional construction company with complicated books and a founder who did not trust anyone under 40. "That is usually for someone with 2 years of experience," I said. Margaret removed her glasses and set them on the desk. "Usually, but you are not usual, are you?" I shook her hand. My palm was sweating. I did not care. In the hallway, Cora was waiting. She had clearly been eavesdropping because her smile was already at full wattage. "Senior staff in 6 months." She grabbed my arm. "I hate you. I love you. I hate you." That evening, I sat on my front porch with a glass of iced tea and watched the light fade over Maple Ridge. The street lamps clicked on one by one. Betty was in her garden trimming something that did not need trimming, the way she did when she wanted company. "Your father came by again today," she called over the fence. "Sat for 12 minutes. I timed him. 12 minutes. 3 weeks ago it was 3, then 5, then 8. He was getting closer. I could feel it the way you feel a season changing. Not all at once, but in the weight of the air." I sipped my tea and smiled. Saturday morning, early. I was in the kitchen in sweatpants and a Greystone hoodie pouring my second cup of coffee when I heard a knock. Not the mailman, not Cora, not Betty. I opened the door. My father stood on the porch in his work boots and ball cap, the same ones he had worn every day of my life. In his hands was a small cardboard box. He looked at the box, then at me. "I brought this for your back door. The lock you have on there. It is a builder-grade piece of junk. This one's commercial. Deadbolt with a bump guard. I use them on job sites." He held the box out like an offering. I looked at it. A door lock. Not flowers. Not a speech. Not a greeting card with someone else's words inside. A deadbolt because that was the language he knew. I took the box. "Do you want to come in for coffee?" He stepped inside, took off his cap, held it in both hands. His eyes moved around the kitchen, the white cabinets, the small window over the sink, the framed degree on the wall above the breakfast nook. He stopped, stared at the frame. I watched his face do something I had never seen in 24 years. His chin tightened, his throat moved. "That is your degree." "That is my degree. First one in the family." He nodded, kept nodding like he could not stop. His eyes were wet. He did not cry. Gary Myers does not cry. Or at least he never has where anyone can see. But he was close. Closer than I had ever seen him. "I should have been there," he said. "At your graduation, I should have been there." No excuses, no redirect, just the truth laid out plain. "Yeah," I said. "You should have." He drank his coffee. Then he spent 40 minutes installing the deadbolt on my back door without being asked. That was his "I love you." And for the first time, I let it be enough. That is where things stand now. My father comes by on Saturday mornings. He brings his toolbox. Last week, it was a leaky faucet under the bathroom sink. The week before, he rehung the closet door that kept sticking. He does not say much. He does not need to. He fixes things. That is his language. And I'm learning to hear it. My mother has not come back. She sends messages through Aunt Margene. "Tell Turai I miss her." I have not blocked those messages. I read them, but I have not responded. Not yet. The door is not locked, but she has not tried the handle. Brandon calls once a week. Short conversations. He asks about work, about the house, about whether the birch tree in the backyard is dying. For the first time in 27 years, he is asking questions he actually wants the answers to. I do not know what happens next. I do not know if my mother will ever sit on this porch and say the words I spent 6 years waiting to hear. Maybe she will. Maybe she will not. But I have stopped making my peace conditional on her participation. Here is what I know. I am 24 years old. I have a degree on my wall, a promotion on my desk, and a mortgage in my name. I have a porch with a railing I repainted last weekend, white like the siding, because I like things clean and simple. I have a neighbor named Betty who times my father's visits and reports back like a gentle surveillance system. I have a best friend who ordered pizza the day I got hired and screamed so loud I went temporarily deaf in one ear. I have a life I built with the same hands that zipped up my own graduation gown with a wire hanger. I did not need them to see my value. I needed to stop discounting it myself. And 47 pages, 47 calls, and 6 years of calculators later, I am finally in the black dot. Thank you for staying until the very end. If you have ever sat at a ceremony, a birthday, a moment that mattered, and looked at an empty chair where someone was supposed to be, then I wrote this story for you. You deserve to be seen. If you want to hear more stories like this one, check out the next video I have linked in the description. It is about another woman whose family chose to look the other way. And if you have not subscribed yet, hit that button.